Hey, hello everyone. Hopefully you can hear me. I cannot hear myself, so you can leave me a comment if you hear me all and well. Probably the sound is kind of echoey. I just moved to a new place and it's still kind of empty around here, so yeah. But I got lots of space, so that's that's nice. All right, so I mentioned today, those of you who know that the stream is going on, that I'm going to be talking about waiting and how to avoid that. Many people do want to avoid that, so I guess let's get started. And thank you for the message. Thanks for confirming that you can hear me. That's great. And yeah, all right. So let's get started. I actually made a little to-do list for today's stream to kind of like walk you through all of the things that we're going to be going through and all of the things that I wanted to say, so I don't forget. So you can check it out over here, right above my head. You'll see the list. So let's get started. So I actually wanted to start with npm start. So this repo, this is something if we have already met, you might be already familiar with. This is kind of an Trello clone application. So if you know Trello, it's basically a to-do app which looks something like this. So let me make it a little bigger. So you can create boards and create to-do lists in there and just add some to-dos like this, and you can look into the detail and drop an image and delete that and etc. So this is kind of my project where I usually, when I do workshops, this is where I kind of explain on this application on how to test with Cypress and how to do various stuff. And it's also a great place for me to learn about programming and about Vue.js, which is the framework used in this application. If you'd like to follow along, then you can go to the GitHub page. So Philip Ritz, Trello app, Vue, Vite, TypeScript. This is kind of, I wanted to put that in here so you know it uses all of the fancy technologies. But although it is kind of fancy, it's just simple npm install, npm start. So yeah, you can definitely follow along and play with that. So yeah, I got my application up and running. So let's look into the let's check into this. Let's look into the retriability and what that is. So let me actually demonstrate. I will open a new terminal and I'll just open Cypress. And I'll show you what I mean when I say retriability, or what Cypress means when they say retriability. I got already some tests over here, but let me maybe look into, yeah, let's create a new branch and to create, what is it, checkout to new branch, and let's call that avoid waiting. And in this branch, I'm going to just delete all of these tests. We're not going to be using them. We'll create our own. So as you can see, no files found. So let's create a spec and call that retriability spec.ts. The spec part is not actually something you have to do. I heard that it is sort of like a convention to call the tests spec, and I never really understood that, but I see that the icon is slightly different if I would just use a bare TypeScript file. So yeah, I use that in my project. All right, so let's write a first test and let's maybe run it. And since there's nothing, Cypress is going to tell me, so let's write a first test, and that will be it should retry. So why am I talking about retriability? Oh, and I have Copilot turned on, but I'm going to turn that off. It's kind of annoying. Toggle on off. All right. Yeah, it's kind of annoying sometimes. And did I not turn it off? Okay, I should have just clicked that message. Let's just still turn that off. All right, so now when I have opened my application, you can see that something is happening. And since I have code coverage in this application, then I get all of these different hooks over here. So let's also turn those off. I don't need those. Let's do coverage, set that to false, which if I do something to my Cypress JSON, that's going to reopen the whole browser and restart everything. So I need to start that again. And yeah, okay, let's see. All right, I have a new test. Let's speed it up a little. Let's open visit. I'll visit my page. Like the localhost, I have a couple of boards over here, and let's do something. Let's select an element. Ooh, nth child, nice. Well, let's just go with board item, or let's use contains. That's actually a fun command. I like that one. So let's do, and everything is called new board. That's awesome. So how about we rename something or delete something? There are too many boards, and retry. Okay, so this is a mess. Okay, so we got retry and new board. So let's select that. Let's do contains, and I want to select data CY board item. Since this, I have my own selectors here, and for some reason the selector playground is not picking them up right now, but they are there, believe me. Let's put this down below. All right, and yeah, this element has class of board and board item data CY. So this is what I want to select, and I want to select the data CY board item with the text retry. This is actually something that I have kind of found a little later in using Cypress, that you can actually have two arguments for contains command, and if you put in the first one, then the first one is actually like same as get. So we would go with the CSS selector and just select these elements, these data board CY board item elements that contain the retry, which is nice because you can kind of select the text of a child element and then but select the element containing that child element with that text. Hopefully that was understandable. All right, so let's do that. Data board item, and here I got it. So what if there wasn't an element like this? So let's do retries, right? So if I save this, Cypress is going to be trying to find an element with this text, with the retries text. And it's not going to find it, and the message is going to say, okay, 400 milliseconds, that was the time I was trying, and I couldn't find anything, so yeah, we're failing the test. And what we can do is to extend that period, time out. So let's do like 30 seconds. So now you can see that the progress bar over here is actually taking much, much longer. And what Cypress is actually doing is that it is retrying it all over and over and over again until we get that text. So if I were to rename that, retries, and then go back to my page, voila, it has found the element. So, and this is like the decision of the Cypress architecture, or the design decision behind Cypress, which I think is really good, because applications kind of change all the time. Or modern web applications, you got this all kinds of API calls which provide your application data. That application is going to use that data and render it out, and then re-render, and everything is changing all the time. So having some kind of retry logic, which is going to be just asking the application if there is something or isn't something, or is something happening, or etc. I think it's a good decision, but what that means, you kind of need to design your tests in a certain way, because oftentimes what you will encounter is that your test is going to be going too fast and too furious. So what to do about that? Normally, like the easiest solution, let's change this back to retry. So again, it's not going to find that element. Normally, what is like a go-to solution is to add wait, right? And if you join the stream, you probably already know that this is that you would like to know how to avoid this. Okay, let's actually not do that. Let's do this. Retries. I don't even need that over here. My point is, sometimes you use this because, or I use this because there is just no other better way for me to determine if the application is in the state that I want it to be. So, for example, I'm waiting for 4 seconds, and I hope and I pray to all of the gods that it's going to be in the state that I want it to be. But if you're adding this wait over here, those 4 seconds, they might be enough, they might not be enough. Sometimes for a month they seem like they are enough, and that's all good. You feel like you solved the problem. And sometimes those 4 seconds are not enough, and you need to add more, which kind of adds into the maintainability of the test, and you kind of add that. But the worst part of that is that during those 4 seconds, you're kind of not doing anything, and your tests are not doing anything. And that's why you kind of want to avoid that. At the same time, if you're a perfectionist and you absolutely don't want any waits in your tests, I encourage you to reconsider. I have spent excessive amount of hours trying to delete all of the waits in my application, and it's not. Sometimes you just waste your time. So if you just add that 1 second wait or 2 second wait or even 3 second wait to your test, you probably in the long run save a lot of time, right? You don't want to like waste 3 weeks fixing a single test just to avoid 1 second wait. You probably have wasted more of your time, and your time is actually much more precious than the time of a computer that is running that test or CI pipeline. So yeah. So how do we if we can find a way of how to avoid test, how to do that? Oh, and before we jump into that, actually I had that to-do list, right? All right, so I added, we talked about retriability already, and we have talked about how to wait in Cypress. So I've just shown you that. Let me actually put this a little higher so you can see. Other thing that I wanted to show you is this ESLint plugin, and it's already talking over here, right? You can see that the wait is actually underlined. My text editor, VS Code in this case, is telling me that this is an error, so I'm being kind of strict about my waits in this application, and yeah, so this is actually an ESLint plugin. Applying an ESLint rule, Cypress, no unnecessary waiting. So I have this set up in this ESLint TRC, ESLint RC file over here, and I have a couple of rules in my project, and yeah, here I have, where is it? I have installed Cypress ESLint plugin, and I have applied Cypress recommended rules. I wonder if so there are basically various ways of how strict you can be with different rules. I don't see the rule of the one that showed up here, the no unnecessary waiting. I don't see it here defined as error, so that is kind of saying that a recommended thing would be too strict and to just throw an error if if there's a wait. But maybe in a bigger projects, I would probably go for a warning. That might be a little better. And all right, and what is that good for? The CY wait, okay, it's underlining over here, but there's actually, how I use that is that I have this script in my package JSON, which is called lint, and yeah, it's doing kind of all of different kind of things, but let's just take this part, which is the ESLint, and it's just going to lint, perform a check of all the files that are everywhere, and they are TypeScript or Vue or JS. Not sure if it's the best practice to kind of lint your code and your test code with the same set of rules. I kind of need to explore that, but maybe you want to like divide those two. So you got your Cypress rule for Cypress test and your, I don't know, Vue and Tailwind and I don't know whatnot rules for the project, for the application. But when I run this, it's basically going to tell me like, okay, here are some warnings, here are some errors, and this is command not found. I guess I need to do npx. I don't have ESLint installed globally. I guess this is what's happening. Argument list is too long. All right, let's just go npm run and do the lint. Is it called lint? Yeah, I called the lint. And this is actually just it's going to run also like prettier, and it's going to do ESLint, and at the end it's going to do all files past linting. I think it's a little bit excessive. I was just kind of having fun with that. But if I do that, it's just going to run through all of the tests. First, it's going to do prettier and format everything over there. Then it's going to do ESLint checks, and when all of those pass and all of everything will pass, then it's just going to say, okay, everything has passed linting. And if there's an error, which I think there should be now, because I'm using a wait over here, then it's just going to throw an error. And yeah, what you do with that, it's up to you. Yeah, you can not allow to merge, or you can not allow to commit or something like that. You can set up kind of a pre-commit hooks and make sure that you are not able to commit something like this, or you can have only set amount of warnings in your code, or no new warnings or something like that. Yeah. Okay, we have a couple of questions, and there's a question if I'm planning on doing another Cypress bootcamp. So if you are familiar with Cypress bootcamp, I'm so happy about that. Yeah, this year I'm going to take that internationally, because I've been doing it just in Slovakia and Czech Republic, and they have been popular and they have been a lot of fun, and I just love doing those, and I want to continue on doing that, and yeah, I want to take it to the world. At the same time, I kind of think like they need a revamp, and they need some kind of changes, and the biggest change would probably be splitting that bootcamp into maybe 2 smaller parts, which would be like the more of a beginner part, and the second one would be more advanced or intermediate stuff, something like that. So that's what I'm thinking, and I'll probably have some news really, really soon. I kind of want to experiment with that and see where it goes. But yeah, I'm definitely planning on doing more workshops, so stay tuned for that. And when a page, there's another question. Let me answer that. When a page reload happens and an element is detached from DOM, I had to use wait in this situation. All right, so the detached element is actually an interesting thing. Let me see if I can simulate this. I think I can. If I do click, and then again I'll go retry and do click again. I think I should be able to simulate that. No. Or maybe get that Borsi item, maybe like this. It's a really, really interesting one, and I like that problem a lot, like the detached from DOM. Let me maybe do an alias board. Let's maybe do that, because that's actually a good one, like in the topic of waiting. No, I couldn't simulate that. Never mind. So what happens with the detached thing? I'm thinking if I'm not able to simulate it in some other way, but I don't think so. Anyways, the detached from DOM, it's basically it happens when you want to interact with an element, but that element becomes something else, and it's basically destroyed and recreated again. It can happen either on redirects, which is for example, like the most oftentimes it happens when you have like a 2-step login, right? You have like put in your email, then click next, and then put in your password and click next. And usually those 2 next buttons, they seem like the same thing, but they are not the same. And And it might happen that when you click that first next button, then type password and click the next button, you kind of get into a situation where Cypress is trying to click on that first next button. And what really needs to be, sometimes what you need to do is just basically to re-query that element again, or maybe time that get command in such a way that you are able to get the right element. So it may happen from time to time. Actually, it may happen quite a lot in applications like this, where everything gets re-rendered, etc. So the key to that is basically to have a good understanding of how the application works, because sometimes elements just change visibility, like they disappear, but they're still in DOM, and sometimes elements get completely destroyed and recreated again. And for a user, it seems like it's the same element, but it's actually two different elements. And what Cypress does is, so when I do something like this, when I do contains and select my element like this, it's going to keep a reference to that element. I think you can even see that when you look into the elements panel and like go over here. No, not like this. Let me select that. Yeah, here you can see like the data Cypress EL attribute. This is not something that I have added. This is something that Cypress is adding during the test. So it's going to, no, this is probably something that is adding during like when I'm clicking through this. But the point stands. I mean, Cypress is keeping the reference to that element, and yeah, if that element gets destroyed, then you get that error. And sometimes, yeah, those are kind of problematic tests. Sometimes, like those, I would say, are the most often the ones that I kind of use the wait with the time for. Yeah, I totally get that. Like if you're getting the detached error quite a lot, then probably the application is doing quite a lot of re-rendering and everything. So yeah, but without looking into the direct application and like pinpointing like this is the exact problem and let's find a solution, it's kind of hard to give like an overall good solution for that. So hopefully that's not too disappointing of an answer. So we talked about ESLint plugin. That's something we have. Let me send a link for that in the chat, so you can see that and use that. I think it's a good one if you want to avoid waits. All right. So we also talked about the timeout, right? So we have added an object over here, a timeout of, I don't know, 30,000 milliseconds, which is 30 seconds. And this is something that we can actually apply globally. And to do that, you can just go to Cypress JSON, and there are different kind of timeouts actually. So do I have it anywhere? No, I don't. So there's a default command timeout. And you can see that this is by default set to 4 seconds, but you can set it to 5 seconds or 8 seconds or 9 seconds or something like that. And this would like enable this for the whole project. What this will do is that Cypress will wait for a longer time to just time out. And if it doesn't find an element, it's going to not wait for 4 seconds, but it's going to wait for this amount of seconds. And if you're working with a slow application, that might be like a sensible solution to do. But beware of that, or I would suggest caution with that, because what this also means is that your tests will fail much slower. So if you have 10 tests and all of the 10 tests will fail, and each one will take 4 seconds of idle time to fail, then you have just added 40 seconds to your whole test run. Do that a couple of more times and you get a whole minutes or maybe even hours until you find out that the application wasn't actually deployed and and nothing is working. You can probably find out sooner, but it eats some time, so you want to avoid that. Probably mostly on CI, where the time is measured in minutes, and you want to fail as quickly as possible if that's a thing. So so setting that globally, that might be something you might want to avoid, and maybe not. That depends on the application. If you don't want to be so harsh, but at the same time don't want to add timeouts to everything, you can add a timeout to a test, right? So, not sure which version was that. I think it was actually pretty recent, but recent could be even like 1 year, where with this. It functions, where the first argument would be the name of the function, the name of the test, and the second would be like the callback, which contains all of the commands. You can add a middle object in here as well, where you can set up some settings, very similar to what you do in Cypress JSON, but you can add it here. Of course, not everything can be added over here. But you can add some of the attributes. So for example, default command timeout, default command timeout, and you can set that to, I don't know, 10 seconds. And if I have like multiple tests, test 2, oops. Yeah, and test 3, then of course it's only logical that this would be applied only for this test. So if you have one test that is particularly slow, or it's testing a slow part of the application, this might be a good way to add a default command timeout for that test. And it's not going to affect test 2 and test 3. If I were to wrap those in a describe, so group, let's add a group and do something like this, and add should retry and test number 2 inside, and I would add this configuration object inside here. Oops, keep the comma here. Then this default command timeout would be applied to this test and this one, but not to this one. So hopefully that makes sense. So that's a good way to deal with a single slow test. Oh, and by the way, speaking of slow tests, a good thing to explore if you are using dashboard, which if you are not, you may be kind of missing out on some cool features, especially the analytics. Ooh, let me log in. Let me do that outside. Not sure what kind of login page I will go through. All right, Trello app. Do I have it here? Yeah. So here I have blah blah blah, multiple tests, and here are the analytics of the dashboard. So I have total of 86 runs on my application, during last 3 months. And what was I saying? Oh yeah, slowest tests. I can look into like what is the slowest test, and I can see it's the list actions. It takes over 30. It takes 30 seconds, and I can look into the test case, but also I can look into the spec file. So you can take like this separate file and look into like which one is probably better to be split into multiple, and yeah, you can look into the branch and stuff like that. It's pretty cool, these analytics, especially I like these flaky tests where you can kind of see, ooh, look how cool I am. 0 flaky tests in my pet project. So, but yeah, I think if I went back, I would find some. Yeah, here it is. Here I got some flaky tests. Yeah, so if there are any flaky tests, you can look into those and you can like not lose track of them. Because yeah, Cypress kind of made a controversial move with like adding the retry of a test function, which is like, yeah, tests should always pass. Why do you add retries? And I was like, I mean, life happens, right? Like the tests are not always ideal, and you just don't really want to waste time. Sometimes if a retry will help, then it will help. That's I think good in my opinion. Of course, you don't want to lose sight of that test, which is flaky. So how about put it somewhere, and yeah, here it is. So you can look into that and treat that test with some treatment it deserves. So yeah. All right, I got a question. So let me look into that. Sorry if I'm like rambling and not not really answering the question, but yeah. So why is Cypress? When Cypress we can do contains alias text, and we have to see what get and should do contain text. So we can't do contains alias, so it doesn't take an alias. I never actually tried that. Let me try it out and confirm what you are saying. So let's do get and this add board item, and I'm going to delete this. So I'll reference this. I'm going to give it an alias of board. Maybe it would be faster if I did it, if I looked into the documentation. But I guess I'm more in experimental mode. So let me see what happens. I never used that. Could not find a registered alias for board. CY contains available aliases are board. And this is a weird message. It doesn't seem like this is what it should say. Like I'm inputting the board as an alias, but it's saying like that I'm inputting this, which is not true. So okay, maybe if I put and if I do it like this, is it going to work? Still not going to work. Oh, that's an interesting point. So yeah, so to answer your question, like why can't we use? I guess that the reason is that this is the way it is, and I'm not sure like what's the logic behind it, because I think like your approach is reasonable, and it would be cool if it worked like this, but yeah. But what one thing that struck me is that you're saying like we have to use get alias and then should contain text. So one thing about contains command, it sounds like an assertion, and you could argue that it is an assertion, but I wouldn't really I didn't really like grow into a habit of using it as an assertion. So if I want to find something that contains this retries text, I'm not going to do it like this. which, I mean, in essence, it does what I want it to do, right? It finds an element that has retries, or if I should probably put this back. If I were to chain these two commands, then yeah, I'm basically what I'm doing is I'm asserting that there is this text inside. But the thing is that contains is actually a selecting command. So what it will return is that it will return an element, and you can see that highlighted. Like this data CY board item is this whole blue box. But what contains will do is that it will select this box inside the blue box. So it's going to find an element that contains this text. And if I were to, I don't know, like write an assertion over here, and that assertion would try to assert something about the whole blue box element, then I'm essentially not testing the right element, I'm testing the element below. Which, I mean, probably in 95% of cases doesn't really matter all that much, but I feel like it's not the right approach. If I want to test this element, this blue box, and I want to find if it contains this text, I think using should is the right approach, because I'm asserting that this element should contain a certain text. Whereas with contains, I'm just selecting an element that contains that text. I mean, it's a subtle difference, but it feels to me like it kind of, it kind of makes sense to me. Hopefully that explains that. Well, thank you for that question. That was a good one. It gave me a chance to express my love for contains. It's actually a great command. I wrote a whole blog about it. So if you want to check that out, you can. Let me actually send you the link, which is and I called it an overlooked gem in Cypress. So yeah. But yeah, it's a selecting command. And I mean, you could argue that if you're selecting something and it exists, then you are basically asserting the existence of that element, and you would be right. One more thing about the contains command, and then I'll promise I'll stop rambling about that, is that the difference between contains and get, there's this little but important difference, is that get will select all of the elements with a certain selector. So if I had two boards over here, let me add one board. If I had two elements over here, it will actually find that it has two matched elements. But if I renamed this and named it board and did contains, CY contains board, then contains will only select the first element. So it's not going to select all of the elements. And that's actually, it can be pretty useful if you use two arguments and you want to select a certain element that contains that text. Then the contains is really good for that. All right, let's go back to command timeout. And I actually showed this, so I think we can check this one off. So yeah, you can do command timeout, and I suggest that you look into the documentation, because not every command is actually retryable. Not every command has this retry logic. So for example, cookies, get cookies. This is something that, and the time to wait, get cookies to resolve before timing out. Which one was that? I thought that get cookies is actually one of those commands that doesn't have a timeout period or a retry logic. Maybe it was something else. Document? I don't know. But the other thing I wanted to point out about commands is that there are different timeouts, right? So here, for example, in the document command, we have this timeout option, and by default, it is a default command timeout. But when we look into, I don't know, intercept, and we'll look into the usage, where are the arguments, the options? Where is the nice little table? Hopefully your head is not spinning right now. All right, I cannot. Let's give you another example. Let's do the exec command. That would be a good one. So it has options, it has a timeout, but it actually has an exec timeout. And there's default commands timeout, there's exec timeout, there's also task timeout, and there's request timeout and response timeout. So there are different kinds of timeouts set to different kinds of defaults, and you can set them up all in the Cypress JSON file. So maybe the Cypress JSON JSON would be a good place to look into the documentation. Yeah. So global, blah, 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 retries, timeouts. Oh yeah, so there's like whole section of timeouts. So by default command timeout is 4 seconds, but we have different timeouts over here. So for example, page load timeout. So if you have a page that is loading really slowly, and it takes more than 60 seconds, hopefully not, but if it does, the page load timeout would be the one that you want to set up in your Cypress JSON to make it a little longer. And there's also request and response timeout. So if you want to, if you are using Intercepts and you want to wait for a command to happen, then and it just takes longer for the application to fire that request, then this is the timeout that you want to change. And there's also response, right? So you get request and you get response, and you get different times of when that should come back. So yeah, and I don't see. Oh, CY wait. Okay, here it is. Yeah. And there's also slow test threshold, which is for when you do Cypress run, but that's a whole another story. All right, so let's go back. Let's go back to our to-do application, and let's do. Oh yeah, let's wait for a page to load. So how about I click on this element, and I actually had something that I wanted to show you with the command timeout. So let's do one thing. How about, what should I do? Data somewhere board item. Okay, let's actually do the should have text, have certain text, have text. Oh, you know what? I'm going to new list. I'm going to do it like this. So let's copy this. This is what I want to visit, and I'll rename this list. And after I do that, I'm going to assert value, because And that this is something that I show on my workshops, that this is actually an input element. So it doesn't have text, it has a value. And the difference between that is that normally a paragraph or heading or div or button would have a text, because they would have an opening tag and a closing tag, and you have a text inside. So the assertion would be should have text. But if you want to assert on an input element, so this is, for example, text area or basically an input of type text, then you don't have an opening and closing tag. So what you need to look for is the value, because this is an HTML5 element. It holds the value, and you want to assert on that. So should have text will not work, but should have value will work. So let's assert on should have value, and let's do the just list, right? So when I now save my test, what's going to happen is that Cypress is going to retry. And when I do that, and when I want to make it wait for a longer period of time, the intuitive thing would be to add it over here. But as far as I remember, that doesn't work. Timeout. So let's do 30 seconds. It's still going to fail in 4 seconds. Actually 6, but 2 seconds it took for the test to open the application. Right, so why wasn't this timeout working, right? Well, actually, the logic in Cypress is interesting in this way. So should command, what it actually will do is it's going to make the get command retry. Because why? So here you have an assertion. You want to assert that a certain element has a value. And what should will do is that it will make this get command requery our application again. If it didn't do that, then the point of retrying would be meaningless, right? Because if we took an element and then saved that element and just were trying to assert again and again and again that it has a certain value, then we would basically be asserting the same thing all over and over again. But when get happens, it's going to query our application, and if this assertion doesn't pass, it's going to query again. So it has to run this get command again. So what you want to do when you want to make an assertion retry is actually to add that timeout to the element before, to the one that is actually going to be retried alongside with the should. One more thing to add over here is that, and you can see now it takes 30 seconds. So if I change the value, you can see the Cypress is retrying, and if I change the value, it's going to pass. So that's nice. So if you want to make sure that it retries, you have to add that timeout to the command that is actually before the should, because should makes the previous command retry. The important thing is that it's not going to make the whole chain retry. So if I had like, I don't know, EQ1 and then, I don't know, something else like filter, and I want to filter some class, I don't know, active, or something like that, basically just chaining one command off another, etc., ending up with something, is not going to retry. This should is not going to make the whole chain retry. It's going to just make the last command retry. So if I ended up filtering with EQ something, that's going to again lead to a result which you might not want. And I'll talk about this in a little while, because this can lead to some interesting situations where you want to, you want to test the whole list, and you want to test that a certain element appears on position 3, but it doesn't appear on position 3 at the beginning. So what to do with that? And that's at the end. Okay, I got again a question, so let me answer that. Thanks for the explain and the link. I was reading the Cypress core and they recommend you use contains and alias. Oh really? Okay. So do they use the alias as I've shown before, or as you said in your question, like the CY contains an alias? Because if that's in the documentation, then that probably needs to get updated. If I understand that. Yeah. So, but aliases are actually a good thing to use, but for many different reasons. And I have another question. If I'm planning on doing any blog about connecting to Oracle database and running SQL queries. Ooh, I don't think I am. That's really like not the area that I'm too familiar with, or I'm looking to explore. But if I remember correctly, that Gleb had some kind of blog about connecting to SQL database, playing with PouchDB, try everything. Nope. How to verify phone. Database. Oh, I actually think it was in the verify phone number during test, and I think what Gleb did here is that he was connecting to some kind of database. Oh yeah, MySQL database connection. Here it is, and this might be a nice one to explore, because what Gleb did is that he ran a task, and using task you can write basically any kind of script or anything that you would do like in a single JS file or TypeScript file or something like that. And I think in essence what he does over here is that he is actually using some kind of module connection and is connecting to a database and doing a query, and then gets that value returned. Return the user, and then goes back to browser and checks that value. So you can kind of like, your tests are running in browser, so that's like the main environment where you are. But with the task command, you can go to a node environment and do whatever the hell node allows you to do. Take some value, store it somewhere, or return that or something like that, and you can return that into the browser again to your Cypress test and use that. So Gleb is doing if I understand, like just by skimming the blog, is that what he does is that he uses some kind of module. I would say that's probably some kind of API node modules, MySQL, and uses that to do a query in the database as you would if you were a backend developer and try to like do some kind of magic with Node and access a database. So in theory, that would be possible. But I don't know too much about Oracle databases or something like that. But here you have an example of how to run a query, so that might be maybe helpful. All right. Back to our list. So one thing that I mentioned in like, by the way, everything I'm talking about I actually written up in a blog, and it's on my page, so you can check that out if you want to look into that. And I wrote also about waiting for a page load. So if I want to like wait for a page to be loaded, then the same principle would apply. So how about go CY get and do the. I actually have a custom command here. Get. What was it called? Get data CY, and it would like autocomplete my selector. So that would be board item. Nice. So I'm going to click that, and if I want to, again, if I'm clicking a link and that page takes a while to load, then I want to do some actions on that page. What I can do is basically write an assertion line, and this assertion would basically become a guard for my test to like not go too fast and just wait for something to happen, have your application in a certain state, and only if the application is in a certain state, then go ahead. So this would again be another example of how you can avoid just by using CY wait and use and do like the, I don't know, the hard wait and just wait for the application state. So so location, and I don't know, path name should contain, and I would say like board, right? Board, because that's what the location actually has, right? So it's board / some number. And I could probably write some regular expression or something like that, but I'm not good at those. So how about just I write it like this? So yeah, the test goes pretty fast, but if I were to test like a really slow application, then again, I would write a timeout over here, timeout, and I don't know, it takes 30 seconds to load, so how about we are going to wait until the URL happens, and only then, when we are on the page, only then like move on with our test. So here is some test magic going to be happening. By the way, there's something I talked about in the past about how to test links with Cypress. So for example, if you have, let me actually show you. So let's say you have a navigation bar, right? And you got, here is navigation bar, and you have 3 links. One would be blog, one would be about, one would be contact. And for some reason you want to test them all, right? So just make sure that this navigation is pointing to the place that it should. The common thing would be like, go to the first one, click on that, assert that we are on the right page. Then again, click on the one, go back, then click on the second link, make an assertion, go back, then third link, make an assertion, go back. This is kind of, like, it takes a lot of time. So you may not really want to do that. And essentially what you want to do over here when you're testing the navigation is make sure that all of the links are live. And I give a couple of examples of what you can do. Like you can use the for each loop to clean your code a little. And also what you can do is use a request. So basically just do a HTTP request to that link and make sure that the link is live, that it returns a 200 error status code. That would not be an error. And if you want to like check all the links to all sites, then there is like a recipe at the end of this block. So let me post that to the chat as well if you want to look into it. But yeah, just came up to my mind with when you want to try a location. All right, so let's. Oops. Oh, and a classic, and that would be something that you probably may already be familiar with. So how to wait for an HTTP request or response. So in a classic example, and I love this because this was this was shown to me by Gleb, and I absolutely love this example, should not exist. Right, so we have one board in our list, and I'm writing a test where I would go visit and go get board item, and it should not exist. And when I save that test, it's going to pass, right? So, and if I look into the DOM, not into the DOM, but into the timeline, you can actually see like why is this assertion passing? Is because it happened way too soon. It happened while the data was still loading. So here I have an API endpoint which goes to API boards. And what this will return is the list of all of the boards from the database, and it's going to render it out. Oh, by the way, I haven't mentioned the database, and we had a question about that. Just to make sure that this is the database. It's just a JSON file. So there's like this nice little module called lowdb, and it's really, really nice. You can basically connect, create a database like this, which with just a JSON file, and it's super easy to like install. So if anyone is doing workshop, the installation is so easy for them. You just go npm install, no MongoDB or something like that, nothing complicated, just npm install takes care of everything. So yeah, so when I do the get API boards, it's just going to return the boards from that JSON file. But Cypress is not going to wait for that, right? Because we didn't tell it to wait for that. And my assertion, when I assert that the board item does not exist, it's actually going to pass because it doesn't exist. By the way, be careful with negative assertions, because if you want something to not exist and you make a typo, then yeah, it will not exist. so yeah. Okay, so let's look into what we can do. And this would be again a place where you might want to add a weight, but you don't really want to do that. Instead, you can use intercept. So let's intercept this boards, this API endpoint, and if I just put one argument, it's just going to automatically be a GET request to this URL. So CY visit. Let's save that, and I think I already did that. Oh, and it's already failing. Just that intercept made it fail, but we're not actually waiting. I think if I ran this a couple of times, yeah, it's going to pass sometimes. So just an example of a flaky test, which is once it's going to pass, sometimes it's not going to pass. Oh, I love that I can have a flaky test and show you how flaky it can be. And this is like an assertion that you might want to do, right? If you have something that should not exist, it will pass, you're happy, but you get a false positive. So, all right, so what we want to do actually to make this test stable and to make it fail every time it should fail, which is in this case every time, I'll write an alias for this intercept, and then I'm going to call it get boards, because that's what this endpoint is doing. It's getting the list of our boards, and after I visit, I want to wait for that response to come. So the wait command is actually going to not only wait for like the request, but is actually going to wait for the response. So until we have some kind of response, it's not going to move to the next command. So the thing about Cypress commands is, and this is something again what I talked about, like the commands actually get queued up one after another. So the code itself, it's asynchronous, but it's not going to. The commands are actually chained and queued up, and every command is going to be executed after the other. So first will be intercept, then it will be s, then visit. After the visit is finished, then we go for wait, then to get, then to shoot. So it's not like going to raise condition the shoot with visit or something like that. So when I now save that, wait, get boards. Oh yeah, I intercepted the wrong. I made a typo, so it's not API board, it's API boards. So now we wait for that, and now it's failing as it should, because we want to assert that there is no such element on page, and there is one. So until it disappears, it's going to retry and eventually fail. Yeah, so coming back to the discussion about contains in the chat, like CY contains. Oh, they didn't recommend to combine them, but it's in a chapter of the alias. Okay, now I understand. Yeah, but I think it would kind of make sense to combine those functions, and maybe not. I don't know. But at first sight, it seems like a reasonable thing to do, like to combine those. Yeah. Anyway, so this again might be another example of how you can avoid using like the hard wait and basically not use explicit wait. And if you want to wait for like multiple commands, so you have so I don't know, like these get API boards will get called multiple times. The wait command can actually get an array. So if you want to wait like for multiple get boards, you can wait for the first instance of get board and then for the second, or this could be something else like some other HTTP request or something like that, and you can wait for all those. So when you wait for all of them, only then and you will move on. Cypress will move on to the next command. So that's again might be pretty nice. So if you open a page and you don't want to start too soon because it's still loading data, then it's then you want to make sure that you list all of the API calls and all of the responses that should come, and only then move on with the test. So yeah, that might be a useful way. I think someone asked me about where you can wait for like all of the requests to happen and only then move on. But I responded with the question like, what would be the all, or who says is going to be that this is all? You kind of need to define that in a test if you really want to do that, which I think might be a little bit of overkill. But yeah, if you want to do that, you need to define all of the requests that you want to wait for. And you can do like wait for all of them, because Cypress has no way of knowing which what the application is going to be doing. Oh, hello, Dennis. All right, so let's move on to the next thing, and that would be wait for anything you'd like. So let's do the. I'm going to do the visit, and how about we do? I think I have somewhere, yeah, the board. Let's open the board and let's create a couple of lists. So what do we do? Let's do computer and do monitor and do, I think 2 elements will be fine. All right, so let's say that we want to assert that the first element is computer and second one is monitor, right? So let's do cy get data cy. And I want to do the card Card item. Can't find. Oh, it's just a card. All right, card and EQ1, EQ0. Actually, the first one should contain text, and the text would be computer. And the second one is going to contain text monitor. Let's save that to see if I've written that well enough. All right, so this works, but let's now change the order of those elements and run my test again. And it's not passing. It should not, right? Because they're not in the right order. But let's say that this list gets re-rendered after the application is loaded, right? So it's I don't know. So there's the API that is kind of fetching the list of the cards, and it's not going to give it to us in the right order, right? This can happen in an application. And then it is ordered in a certain way on front end because the user wants to have it sorted in some way or something like that. And yeah, so let's say we have the data we get from backend is not sorted in the proper way, but it is rendered immediately, and then there's a function which is going to reorder those into the desired order. So this is something that you may have actually encountered, maybe not. But let's take that as an example. So if I want to make sure that the first element and the second element that they have proper texts, I may get into problems. Let me actually see if this problem is present in my application as well. No, because they get re-rendered. All right. It could happen that if I reorder those elements, it's not going to pass because what? Because those elements would just not get would not behave as we might expect. But this seems to not be the case. But if it were the case, let me show you how I would approach that. So we already know that if we use get and we have two matched elements, that the get command will return every element that is with a certain selector. So what we can do is we can use then function and then do a callback, create a callback, and then use chai, which is bundled inside Cypress and is actually used inside every shoot command, and write an assertions, right? So I want to expect that item, let's call that items, makes more sense to me. That expect items to have length, and that length would be 2, right? So what we're asserting here is that this get command is actually going to return an array of 2 elements. So this, so basically it's the same as we would do if I were to get that element and write a should have length 2, but in a different, slightly different scenario. So let's say I want to test the text of those elements. So I want to reference item number 0 and item number 2, and I want them to have text, and that text would be, in the first case, that would be computer, and the second one would be monitor. And to have text, what did I do wrong? But the text was computer gen. Oh, all right. So the have assertion is actually kind of a hard one, although I'm not sure why the first one has passed, because if that would be the case, then I would expect. Oh, this is the, oh yeah, this is the have length, so it's actually not passing. Let me delete that, so to avoid confusion. To have text means to have like the exact text. So I'm expecting that this whole card element is going to have the exact text of computer and monitor, which is not true because this element actually has a lot of other elements inside it. It has an input element, this checkbox, which actually is going to actually has a white space in it, and there's this January and everything. So what we want to do is create a little softer assertion and do contains. To contain, this feels more, and this feels better. So we just want to make sure that it contains this text. And it seems that we are now passing, right? So the first one should be computer, the second one should be monitor. So if I reorder those and run my test again, naturally it's not going to pass. One thing to notice is that it's going to actually fail quite fast. So then command, this is something that doesn't have a retry. So whatever you pass on to the then, it's not going to retry, it's just going to work with whatever you have given it. But what you can do is to write this as should. And what that means is that when I save my test, it's going to be retrying and requerying our DOM, and we can actually set that to a bigger timeout. So let's do, I don't know, timeout of 30 seconds. Oh yeah, I haven't written my custom command in such a way. So how about we do the data cy equals card. So that was like the get data cy is just my custom command that I'm using, and I haven't added the option to pass a timeout. So that's why I had to rewrite it to a simple get command, which is basically, so the get data cy command is my custom command, which is basically just a wrapper around this get command, but it's not doing everything that the get command can, because get command is more powerful. So let's save this, and now you can see that Cypress is actually re-querying the DOM, and it's trying to assert that the text of the first card is computer and text of the second card is monitor, and it's not passing until I reorder those. And now it's passing. So the fun thing about this is that you can actually use that for basically anything. Like, this is pure JavaScript land. Everything is pure JavaScript land, but here you can write your own custom logic or own custom function. Just add basically anything that you want. You can even write your own custom error over here if you want to. So for example, let's say if the items length is not equal to 3. Let's say we want to 3 elements, we can throw new error. And I've shown this actually in the Test Automation University example. So not enough elements. That's a lot of typos. Okay, so not enough elements if it's not passing. So and I'm actually having the timeout of 3000, and it's going to wait for 30 seconds until it throws this error. So if this doesn't return true, then it's just going to keep on retrying. By the way, I can do like a console log over here, console log, and do like hello. And when I run that and open the console, you can actually see that it is retrying and writing hello over time. So you can actually see the retries happening over here. So that's why you kind of don't want to put inside this should something too heavy, because if you do, remember it's going to run that this many times, and it may be a little harsh for for the computer. But yeah, this way, I mean, I don't know. Let's say you have something that doesn't like work all too well with the retries. I don't know. You have what would be a good example? Oh right, cookies or local storage or something inside the state of the application. So if you want to retry, I don't know, like there's something on the window object, right? So we have a window object, there's some element and it has should have some kind of value. Then you can just go and reference the window object and then pass that and then make assertion on the window object. So what I did quite recently was that we would have an application that would load. It would load all the resources, and it would also have this, like in the right bottom corner, it would have this like contact us chat application, and it would make sense to load that just after everything is loaded, right? So we don't want to like block our application from loading with a third-party service. So we load that third-party service at the end of like everything. So and when the third-party service was loaded, to add that into the application would just be like add a script, and that script would get executed at the end, and it would just like add something to the window object. And I wanted to make sure that this actually works. I wanted to click on it and see if it pops up. And what I would do is like use this window and then use my shoot command. So I would assert that the third-party application would actually appear on the window object. And I would retry that until that was true and then like proceed with my action. So so after this shoot is passed, I would get that element and click on it, and I would make absolutely sure that it works. Because if I didn't have this assertion, then I would probably click on that way too soon, and it wouldn't register. So yeah. So I guess this is basically like it for today's stream. Everything that I wanted to show you. One more thing I want to show you is that really soon, in fact in 2 days, I'm going to be doing a webinar with Applitools on how to get started with Cypress. So it's in 2 days. If you haven't registered, make sure you do now. And I'm going to talk about like how to start, like how to start from scratch, how to install everything and write your first test, and what are the drawbacks and what are the things that you kind of need to think about when you want to start using Cypress, or you are considering it to be used in your project or your application. So hope to see you over there. And yeah, this has been fun. I haven't streamed in a while, and I'm super happy I'm back into it. Again, yeah, I have moved. It's still a little bit echoey, but I have my own room where I can work, so I'm super happy about that, and expect to see more of me this year. And I hope to meet you soon. And yeah, stay tuned. Those workshops are coming. I'm really eager to teach you some fun stuff and to teach myself. Actually, I need to teach myself quite a lot. Ooh, what's this? I should have closed that. I need to teach myself quite a lot if I want to be able to explain. So yeah, see you next time. See you on Wednesday for the Applitools webinar, and I guess I'll see you next week. And I already think that I have a topic in mind. Don't want to speak too soon, but maybe we should take a closer look into variables next week. I think that might be fun. Hopefully it will be fun. All right, so see you next time. Bye-bye. It was nice.